Hello, everyone, and welcome to Deckbuilding Derezzed. I'm your host, CodeMarvelous, and today I'm joined by Kiv, otherwise known as Chris, who is the author of a very interesting Hayley Kaplan deck that we're going to be going over today. Go ahead and say hi, Chris.
Hey guys, so it's Chris here. You may know me as Kiv. I'm the author of the Meteor Deckbuilder and also have a YouTube channel where I post videos every day about various decks that I find interesting, combination of competitive stuff and also more of the jankier stuff.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of your channel. I usually check it every day or catch up on it on the weekends. I really appreciate just the very candid, experimental content that you have of just testing things out and talking about decks.
I'm glad you like it. Like it's totally unedited, just off the cuff.
Right. I mean, you're doing it in a lot of. You're doing, in a sense, what I'm doing, which is taking what you would do anyway and just being like, somebody would probably want to watch this.
Yeah, exactly. So if it helps even one person, I've had people come up and say, "Oh, thanks for your videos. It kept me, in Netrunner when I wasn't able to play, or kept me thinking about different deck ideas."
Right.
So that's kind of really gratifying when that happens.
Yeah, and that's why you do it, right? Because we're not making fat YouTube cash making Netrunner videos. We do it because we love the game.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's for the community kind of thing. So,
but let's talk about this deck because man, am I excited about this deck. So it's Hayley. For anybody who might not be aware or newer to the game, Hayley is the shaper that has the ability that whenever you install a card, you can install another card of the same type. It doesn't have to be the same card, but just the same type. So you can do 2 resources for a click, 2 programs for a click, 2 hardware for a click, but it has to be the first thing you install. So if you use it on a clone chip, but you don't have any other hardware in your hand, you can't then install a resource and use her ability on that. It's whatever the first thing you put down is. But tell me a little bit about where you started with this deck, what the kind of genesis was of why you picked Hayley for this idea.
sure. So the main idea of the deck is just to install a lot of stuff, and then levy and install a lot of stuff again. So Hayley is really the main idea for installing a lot of stuff. Kate, you're going to get that discount once per turn on a program or hardware, but here we have a lot of resources as well to install. So really Hayley just makes sense to be able to get value off of any card type, not just programs and hardware. The other major thing is that we're only playing one self-modifying code. So what Hayley lets you do is during the run, you can use a clone chip to put a program in, and you can install a program from your hand that you really need during the run. So it gives you that kind of mid-run flexibility that you wouldn't have if you didn't have, since there's no SMCs or only one SMC.
Right. Yeah, I mean, she for me, she is like distilled shaper bullshit. Like she is like shaper tricks the identity. Because just all of the permutations and combinations, like I've clot locked people out of hand with her, all sorts of stuff. I think one of the other things that is interesting about using her for this is I feel like Hayley is also like almost always better when all of your stuff's cheap and a lot of the stuff in this deck is 1 install cost.
Yeah, that's right. So
it helps you get stuff out of your hands because you're not paying 2 big costs to put 2 big things down. You're putting down like an astrolabe and a clone chip. So you're usually going to have the money on hand to install whatever 2 cards you're putting down.
That's right. So there's very little burst econ in this deck, and you're very, very poor in the early game. But it's okay because all your cards are so cheap that you can get started. And once your engine is rolling, you're just have crazy amounts of money. The late game money of this deck is probably greater than any other runner deck in the meta right now.
Yeah, I've been testing it for a while, and I'm frequently above 50 credits at the end of the game. Yeah. So I'll let you take it away. Where do you want to start as far as what we should talk about first with this deck?
Well, let's talk about sort of the key interaction that this deck makes possible. So want to look at Replicator first?
Yes.
Yeah. So this is a hardware that's
people's favorite card.
Yes, this has been in a lot of decks since it came out very, very early in the game's history. But there was never really hardware that was cheap enough to really abuse it. Like you can get 3 RDIs, which is okay, but they're $4 each, so it's hard to actually afford to do that. Right. However, with the spy camera, these cost 0. So and you can get 6 of them, so you're getting many more triggers than you would with an old replicator deck. This hardware has the keyword whenever on it, and that's a very powerful word that you can't underestimate that. So a lot of effects in Netrunner are capped to the first time in a turn something happens. And
Right.
so the upside of that card is inherently limited to how many turns there are in the game. Whenever card is got so much upside potential, right? There's no limit to how many times you can trigger it if you find a good interaction for it.
Right. Oh, and it's just fantastic. Like the just the spy. Even if you didn't have any of the other things, just the spy cameras. 6 cards going down on a single click is just immense.
Right, but you thought you need to have the Bazaar out too, so we could talk about Bazaar next.
Yeah. Oh, whoop, wrong one. So Bazaar, for those of you who might not be familiar with it, it is a new-ish card. Whenever, again, that magic word, whenever you install a piece of hardware, you may install another copy of that hardware from your grip, paying all costs, of course.
Right, so this is kind of the missing piece of the replicator puzzle. So just to spell it out completely, you're going to install a hardware. Replicator will search your deck for a second copy, and then you can trigger the Bazaar to install that new copy you've just searched immediately. And that triggers the replicator again, and they go back and forth in a kind of a chain reaction until you've got all copies of the card.
And it's worth noting, everybody at home, that the reason this works is because as the active player, you always control the timing of all interactions when things are simultaneous triggers like this.
Sure. So they're both, when you install a hardware, you can order the however you want them to be. So you're going to do replicator first and then do the Bazaar.
Yeah, it's just crazy. And yeah, just I guess I'll install 6 cards in 1 click. That seems okay. Right.
So that's getting a lot of click savings right there. So every time you're using this Bazaar trigger, you're really gaining a click. So if you think about the number of clicks you gain over the course of a game, it's really comparable to some other power cards like Chronotype that are getting you a click every turn. It's almost that many clicks you're saving.
Right. Yeah, it's really good. So where do you want to go next?
Let's talk about the spy cameras, because that's kind of the jank card that is a star here.
I don't think it's a jank card. I love spy camera. I think it's so good.
Yeah, you can certainly build around it, but most decks don't have 6 deck slots to commit to this. And it also takes a long time to install all of them if you're not doing this replicator combo.
Right. But yeah, it's 0 cost. You can trash it to look at X cards of your stack and rearrange them in any order, whereas X is the number of spy cameras installed. But the more common use ability is the trash can ability, which lets you look at the top card of R&D, so it makes it so that you only need to run R&D when you know that it's actually going to be worth it for you to run.
Right. So it's a form of multi-access. Even though you're not actually accessing more than one card, you're only running when the runs are going to be valuable, which is what multi-access does for you too.
Right. Yeah, that's fantastic. And I also just love the art. It's a tremendous card, and it's 0 to install, and it's 1 influence, which I think is 100% accurately priced and influenced so that people can actually experiment like you've done here.
Right. And the rearrangeability is actually very good too. In this deck, you're putting all 6 out at once, so often the first thing you'll do after you put 6 cameras down is look at the top 6 cards and find what the next card you need is and put that on the top.
Yeah.
Then you're off to the races. There's also interaction with Replicator here in that once you've arranged the cards and drawn the one you needed, if you put a hardware down, you're going to shuffle your deck from Replicator, and that will get rid of all the cards that were in the top 6 you didn't want.
Right. That's also true. That was something, that's something I didn't even think about. Really using it to kind of do, not card kind of card filtering, yeah. I think it's also worth noting that I very commonly, I don't know if you do this in your play with the deck, I can't imagine that you don't. I also companion this with Clone Chip using Hayley's install, and then I'll just install all 9 cards in one pass, and then I'm at full Clone Chips, full Spire cameras.
Right, yeah, you could definitely do that. So you do all 6 cameras with Replicator Bazaar, and then you use Hayley to put the Clone Chip in, and of course that's going to trigger Replicator again and Bazaar again. So 9 cards down for 1 click is just crazy.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good. It makes me feel really good. Like, I think probably the next important card in this little trigger frenzy that we're doing is probably the Technical Writers.
Sure, yes. So this is your kind of early game econ source. All your cards are so cheap. You can just put stuff down just to get it out of your hand, right? Because you have to draw to find your pieces. You have to install stuff otherwise you're just going to discard them, and everything ticks your tech writer up. Right. So whether you're putting a 1-cost card down, you can think of it as breaking even because you're going to get that money back.
Right. Yeah, and it's just really good because it just becomes this impending dread right? Like if you get one of these to like 9 or 10 and you've got breakers out, it's just an absurd amount of remote pressure because you can just pop it and threaten any server at any time.
Right. Like if you don't need the money, you can let it sit as long as you want to, and it will just build and build and build to 20, or sometimes even seen 30 counters on it. And it just makes this despair in the corp's mind because they have lost all hope of ever taxing you out.
Right. Going along with that, we've got Tech Trader.
Yep. So this is splashing influence, but it's well worth it because you need to have the redundancy in your effects. Just 3 tech riders on their own would not be enough. So now you've got 6 effects that are going to benefit you.
Yeah.
So the deck is full of trash effects, mainly the spy camera. You can trash that to get money. So you're actually getting paid to multi-access the corp later in the game, which is pretty funny. So this is one of the key cards of the deck because the breakers are also trashable, and so is clone chips. So you'll often break ice for less than $0 thanks to Tech Trader.
Right. Yeah, and it's just tremendous because what you've really done here, and one of the things that we were discussing before we started recording, is you took essentially the good things about the Geist engine and took away the accidental overdraw by making it not Geist.
Yeah.
And also made it so that since we have things like SMC and Panopticon available to us, we have a flexibility that our breakers aren't a problem like they are in Geist, where we're not worried about getting locked out of a server.
Right. So Geist sometimes you're going to have a crowbar, you really need a spike, or vice versa. With the Panopticon in here, it doesn't matter what type the ice is, you have an answer for it.
Right.
So here's the Pancha. There's only one in the deck, but you only really need one most of the time.
And you're filtering through pretty quick, so you find it pretty fast.
Yeah, the amount of draw on this deck is pretty great as you get set up with the sports hoppers. So the main use of this card, if you haven't seen it before in action, is to add this type of destroyer to any ice. And then Sharpshooter can break it because Sharpshooter will break any destroyer ice.
Yeah.
Right, so here's Sharpshooter. It essentially becomes an AI breaker because you're making whatever ice you need to deal with destroyer. And a lot of sentries are already destroyer. Like if you want to go through an Ichi, it's no problem. You just Sharpshooter through it. Problem solved.
Gaining a net of 2 credits to break Ichi 1 makes people so sad.
Yeah, it's a very favorable ratio, plus or $1 for 2 strength.
Yeah, it's so good. Yeah, Panopticon and Sharpshooter here is just very strong. Now, I have a question for you, though. Now, I think the Sharpshooters are the best choice, but I don't even see a single Deus Ex here. A lot of previous Pancha builds included a Deus Ex. Can you explain to me why that's not something that you put in here?
It's a very good card, and if you expect people to hurt you with like net damage, then certainly by all means play that card. It's just kind of a matter of deck slots, and the fact that Deus Ex is 3 to install. Sometimes early game you don't want to pay 3 for a card. A lot of the theme of this deck is to have as cheap as possible on all the cards that are in there.
Yeah.
But the Deus Ex is very solid, and you'll probably need it if you see like Ronins coming at you or snares coming at you. Then just put it in, no problem.
Okay, yeah, I mean, that's fair. I figured it was something like that, but the Sharpshooter, it's so economical in this deck, and especially with the ice that people are running currently, it's, like, delicious.
Yes, delicious is a great word for it.
Yeah, it's really good. So let's do the rest of the programs real quick. We have the zoo, keeping with our theme of let's keep the icebreaker costs low. You can just get this out of your hand.
Right, and it's also worth mentioning that we do have Link Source in our deck. So if you have Sports Hopper installed, then you might not need to spend memory for this card, which can be pretty important if you need to keep your Clot out or keep your SMC out. Having the extra MU can be pretty nice for you. And
it's really not that bad of a breaker when you have a lot of money.
Yeah, that's the thing. So early game, you get this down for $1, and you can break Quandaries, no problem. Enigma is not too bad. And then you're hoping by the time they manage to get 2 Turings or like Tollbooth's res that you have either the Panopticon to take care of it, or you can just pay through it because you don't even care.
Right. We've got an Inti, again, keeping with the theme of the inexpensive breakers.
Yeah, barriers are not popular these days for good reason because Lady just chews through any barrier very efficiently. So people have mostly given up on playing barriers at all except for like a couple of wraparounds or vanilla.
Or like takes care of them.
Right. So if it's just a wraparound, you're through it super cheaply.
Right. And it's again something that can be fed to Hayley's ability very easily as an add-on to something else.
Right. And if you overwrite it, not a big deal. You can clone it back if you need it.
Right.
And some decks you won't need it, and you'll know that early on, that they're only playing Eli's or they're only playing Hive or something that you don't need to break that way.
And on the note of Eli, because the reason why you're not going to need Inti if they're only playing Eli's is because we have my favorite Shaper Breaker.
Yeah, this is your get out of jail free card. If you know what their deck is like, then you can set this to the perfect value and just make them very sad.
Yeah, I mean against that new making news deck that's really popular, I just set it to 3 and just get through all of those 3 strength trace ice that they have.
Sure, and that's where the Hayley is giving you power too, because you can have this in your hand. You can clone out a different breaker and then install the Atman from hand, or clone your Atman out. The flexibility is there to be really reactive what the corp is doing.
Yeah. Yeah, Atman's just a fine card. It's really good, and it's worth noting that in this deck you don't fear a swordsman or a Turing because you have other ways to take care of them.
You're also fine just letting your programs get trashed. I've lost like 4 programs in a row once, and it's no big deal.
Right.
You have 3 levies.
Right. So yeah, let's talk about events for a moment because we do have a very rare 3 levy AR lab accesses.
Yeah, like you can get away with 2 most games. Like on the average game, I'll use 2, and the third one I won't use. But sometimes you're going to want that 3rd levy, and it's better to have it and not need it than really need it and not have it.
Right, and because you do tear through this deck really fast.
Right, so with the spy camera, you're thinning your deck. Every time you use Replicator, you're decreasing your deck size by quite a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Because like, let's just say optimally, let's say you have the combo, right?
Right.
So you've got the Tech Traders, 1 Bazaar, 1 Replicator, and an Astrolabe down. Bare minimum, right? So that's 1, 2, 3... That's 6 cards, right? So you've got 39 left. So when you levy and then do, like, let's say Spy Camera Clone Chip, you've taken 9 cards out of that remaining equation instantaneously. Like, you've thinned your deck by almost a third.
Right. It's absolutely massive, and that's why you can play so many 1x cards, because you will see them with the amount of draw and thinning you have in the deck.
Right. So we have 2x Dirty Laundries. Tell me why. Just easy way to get money in this deck?
Yeah, you actually can't afford Sure Gamble because you're going to start playing 1-cost cards. You're going to get into $3, $2, $1 in your bank early game. So having an econ card that only costs 2 is what you need early game to just get set up. And you have to check some servers. If you check nothing, then you'll have Ambient just put a Naked Astra out and score that way.
Yeah, do it the cheeky way. Just put the agendas down on the table.
Right, like if they can tell that you really don't want to run, they can get away with a lot of stuff that way. Also, sometimes you just need to run sometimes and kill things like Sensi Actor's Union is a card you can't let sit for too long. So this makes checking a couple remotes, doing a couple runs, a little more economical.
Yeah, helps advance your board state while checking the things you need to check.
Right.
So we got 3 Diesels. Not a lot of discussion needed there. Diesel's a fine card, especially when you're installing cheap stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
We have 1 Freedom Through Equality, which, man, when this was spoiled, I did not think that this was going to be as popular as of a runner card as it's turned out to be. But it's pretty damn good.
Yeah, it's because of Global Food Initiative, right? There's a lot of decks playing food and making it hard to get to 7. You can get to 6 points with 3 2-pointers. That 7th point can be really hard to get. And this is that 7th point, and it wins a lot of games. It's absolutely crucial. You cannot cut this card.
Yeah, no, it's good. And then we've got 1 modded, just a singleton.
Oh, just to go back to Freedom for a second, it's worth mentioning that you are going to hit with it guaranteed because you're going to have your spy camera and see the top of R&D. It's an agenda. You play your Freedom and run in. So you're not gambling with it. You're not leaving it out for turns upon turns, hoping to get points. Right. When you play, you know you're going to score.
Though it is worth noting that I have on a couple of occasions against Polana used this to clear, crushing cerebral static.
Right.
Which just really puts the brakes on this deck. Yeah,
like Login Protocol, Targeted Marketing. There's a few that you might see played against you. Housekeeping is another one that could be quite annoying for you if you didn't have this current.
Oh my god, if somebody played Targeted Marketing on Spy Camera and you couldn't clear it, it's brutal.
Well, they get 60 credits. It's actually okay.
It's actually okay.
They still can't keep it out. Like, their ice is not good enough. They can't even spend 60 credits.
Right. So we've got a singleton modded.
Yeah, this is similar to Dirty Laundry. It's just an early card to smooth out your draws. You don't necessarily need it, but your Sports Hopper early on is expensive. It's at $3. It's the most expensive card in the deck. except for the levy, right? So if you can get your hopper down for 0, then you can trigger it right away and get your draw filtered up for the early game. So it's a nice little smoothing out card.
Yeah.
Even if you only get $2 replicator, it's still better looking for credits like 2 or 3 times.
Right. I also just appreciate little things about the cards of Netrunner. Like, I appreciate that Magnum Opus, the card that was the most common target for this card, is pictured on the card. Yeah.
Yeah, the art is beautiful. Love the card.
But yeah, I just appreciate that, where it's like, hey, by the way, it might be a good idea to use this on things like Magnum Opus. So filling out the hardware, we do have the 3 sports hoppers. One of my favorite new pieces of art. Just a tremendous card. It's so good in so many decks.
Yeah, this is what Plastic should have been from the start. You know, it's not a hard counter to meet damage that's super narrow. It's more of a soft counter that's
got some other utility.
Use. Right.
Yeah.
That's what's good for the game, is to have not silver bullets, but cards that you can put in to tweak your matchups and not make it just like very binary black and white. Either you're dead or you're immune.
Well, you know, Lucas did a lot of tremendously good things for the deck from a thematic standpoint and from a design perspective. But, you know, that's a lot of his legacy. He believed very strongly in the idea of silver bullets in games.
Yeah, and I think some of that's just a learning experience too, right? As you design, you grow as a designer and figure out what's working well and what's not working so well.
Right. But, you know, there was a lot of counter cards in the first few cycles where it was like, you know, this directly counters this, this directly counters this.
Right.
So we're kind of moving away towards that, where it's like, hey, like this helps you with this, but also does this.
Right.
Like you were saying. And then the only thing that we haven't talked about is we haven't talked about the political operative.
Sure. So this is a card you may have all seen Crescentus, but we'll talk about what this card does right here. So the main use is to make your Caprice and USA matchup a lot easier. You just can run HQ. They can't keep you out of HQ. And then you get this down and you can bust the remote anytime you want. So if you're bad at side games, then this is a great card for you.
I'm horrific at side games.
Yeah, so if you could just not play a side game. And it also has that trash symbol on it, so you're making $3 when you use it, which is pretty spicy.
And it's worth noting that you're going to see this multiple times because of how many levies are being played here.
Right. Odds are, like, if you use it, kill a Caprice, you can get it on the table again before they find another Caprice.
Right. Yeah,
so this card will come out and just haunt them forever. It can also be used against Jackson. So what people want to do a lot of the time is keep a Jackson in a remote so that when you spy camera them, they can shuffle it away if there's an agenda. But the political operative can just snap kill Jackson whenever you see an agenda on top before they get a chance to react.
Right. It's good. Yeah, so that's the deck. It's got a lot of interesting stuff going on, but and it's kind of hard from the outside looking in. Like when I looked at this list, it's kind of hard to basically see how the game comes together. But it does. It's tremendous. Got a tremendous amount of power, and I'm very excited about it. Kiv, thank you very much for coming on the channel, man. I really appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure.
Can you let everybody know what's the exact name of your channel so they can find it online?
If you just search Kiv Netrunners in a comp, is like the first thing you see.
Yeah, I highly recommend checking it out, especially if you're already a viewer of this show, or it's, you know, you like to watch just people play and test decks. It's perfect. Check it out. It's a great channel. We're gonna follow this up with the test run where we go on competitive Jinteki and we take it for a spin. Everybody watching at home, until we see you again, always be running.